G'day guys, how you going? Hope you're all having a great evening. Tonight I'm going to be doing part 2 out of my old versus new series. I kick-started off the series yesterday with I Spit on Your Grave, so I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope you enjoy this film and this video just as much. So there's only going to be 3 parts to this, so it's very quick. The film I'm going to be doing today is the first of its kind. Now, I Spit on Your Grave was to follow. I actually thought I Spit on Your Grave was first, but my research failed me on this occasion, so I apologise for that, but this film was the first of its kind, and it gained a lot of controversy and a lot of notoriety, which influenced I Spit on Your Grave. So this is the first of its kind. It's a 1972 film. It was directed by Wes Craven, and the remake, which I'm going to be comparing this to, was made in 2009, directed by Dennis Iliadis, and this film is called The Last House on the Left. Now, I own the remake, as you can see, but I don't own the original. But I've seen the original, so I can compare the two and give you my verdict on which film was the best for me. So the original starts off with 2 girls, and they're on their way to a rock concert, and they stop off in this dangerous neighbourhood because they want to score some weed before going to this concert because they want to get high. So they meet this young man on the street named Junior, and he's a drug addict himself. And he offers the girls some Class A Colombian weed back at his apartment. So the girls agree to go back to his apartment because he's promised them this awesome weed. And when they get there, they didn't expect to have 3 strangers waiting for them. Now these strangers are Krug, who is the ringleader of this group, Sadie, who is Krug's girlfriend, and Podowski. Now these are 3 convicts. I'm not sure if Sadie was a convict, but she's part of the group. And they don't force themselves upon these 2 women to start with, but they're just making them really, really uncomfortable. And as the night progresses, I'm not going to tell you what happens, but it ends up with the 2 girls inside the trunk of these criminals' cars. And they take these girls out to the woods where they rape and humiliate them. And after this encounter, which once again I'm not going to spoil anything, after this encounter they're driving off and they have car troubles and they ask for help. They stop at the nearest house, and this house belongs to one of the girls' parents, and the convicts aren't aware of who the house belongs to, but they just see this as an opportunity to get some help, and the parents aren't aware what's happened to their daughter and just who has done these awful things to them. But then the parents eventually become aware and they think of a plan for revenge. And that's as far as I go with the story because I don't want to spoil anything, but that's just your general sort of synopsis. So what my thoughts on the original. I'm going to start off with the original and then I'll go to the remake. The original, the acting was great. Now Krug, who plays the main villain, was one of the most sadistic, cruel, nasty, depraved characters in horror cinematic history for me. He just had a very menacing presence, and he nailed the Krug character to perfection. Wes Craven casted this movie very, very well, and Krug Stillo will stay as one of the most notorious sort of characters in horror movie history, for me at least. Because what Krug does, his appearance, he has a very scruffy look, and he does look like a very, very mean guy. He looks like the type of guy you wouldn't want to pass in a dark alley. His level of depravity, especially where he's humiliating these girls and what he asks these girls to do in the woods, will just have a really sad sort of feeling in your stomach. Now, the rape scene in this film is very brutal, it is very nasty, but it is different to I Spit on Your Grave. I thought the brutality on I Spit on Your Grave original was greater than the brutality in the Last House on the Left original, but I felt that the Last House on the Left original had more emotion in it, in the rape scene. More emotion, there's more humiliation, and while you feel sad for both movies on the rape scene, you have a greater sort of sense of dread in this film because the humiliation that takes part in this film before the rape scene was just really heart-wrenching, and straight away you don't want to see what these girls are going to be put through, and the humiliation and then the rape is just a real kick in the guts. And I thought Wes Craven directed that scene to perfection. He created a very shocking sort of atmosphere, and it really did set the mood for the whole film to come. And then we get to the revenge scene. And the revenge scene, like the I Spit on Your Grave revenge scene, wasn't as brutal and shocking as the rape scene, but it was equally as it was gorier, and it wasn't as shocking, but it was shocking, if that makes sense. But it wasn't as memorable as the rape scene. The rape scene, like in I Spit on Your Grave, will stay with you for a lot longer than the revenge scene. And the revenge scene, like the I Spit on Your Grave, it'll give you a real sense of justice. So you really end up wanting these people to hurt these convicts for what they've done. So very similar in the rape revenge sort of thing as I Spit on Your Grave. That's why I'm making the references to the film that followed this one. Now, I'll get to what I didn't like about the film and what I thought nearly ruined it for me. Now, Wes Craven decided to put in stuff to lighten the mood. Now, the soundtrack was to lighten the mood. Well, I feel it was to lighten the mood. I'm not totally sure. It was just a really silly soundtrack. I don't know why it was put in. It completely went against everything the film was about. I am assuming it was to lighten the mood, or it was to show the mood that was inside the convict's mind. Now, I'm not sure. It just was totally out of place, and it nearly ruined the film for me. It kind of lightened the mood that didn't need to be lightened up. It kind of come across as trying to give the viewer to kind of lighten the mood and forget about what's happened. But to me, it just didn't make sense because it didn't do it. It completely ruined the mood for me. And there's also two extra characters of police officers, and they were comedy relief because they were fairly silly. And once again, went completely against what the overall film was trying to come across as. So I really don't understand why Wes Craven put this comic relief in. I wouldn't say it's laugh out loud comedy, but it's just dark sort of, I wouldn't say it's dark humour, it's just a mood sort of lightener. And I don't understand why he's done it. I have seen directors in the past that's blended sort of dark comedy that's making light of a very bad situation, but this was done differently. This was just put in out of the blue, and I don't know what the hell Wes Craven was thinking because it nearly ruined the film for me. And that's my only real criticism of that one, but it is a huge criticism. So that was a disappointing sort of aspect to the film. Now I'll get to The Last House on the Left. Follows on the remake. Follows pretty much the same as the original, just a few differences here and there. I won't go through them because it's not needed, because the overall idea is much the same. Now this film, the rape scene's not as horrific and it's not as degrading and humiliating. Krug doesn't ask these two girls to do the things that Krug asked them to do in the original. So the rape scene, like in the I Spit on Your Grave remake, isn't as saddening and brutal as the original was. But once again, like the I Spit on Your Grave remake, the revenge scenes are very, very brutal, much more brutal than the original. So a lot of similarities between the four films, this, the original and remake of I Spit on Your Grave. Now, what I didn't like about this film, I thought it was very Hollywood feeling. Now, the characters were very sort of glamorous. It's just a real Hollywood kind of feel to it. Even though this is an extreme kind of Hollywood film, it really did have a Hollywood feel. The characters were all fairly attractive. They didn't really fit the bill for a convict group. The guy who played Krug, I thought, was very well groomed. He didn't really have a very sadistic looking appearance. He didn't, he wasn't scruffy like he was in the original. I felt that if Krug was like David Hess in the original, this would have been perfect. If they could have got David Hess to be in this film, I thought it would have been much better. But I thought that even the parents, they were very attractive, and I just felt that it was very Hollywood sort of feel. And for a film that was this brutal and humiliating and degrading and depraved, I felt that the overall, just the look of each character was just a little bit too clean for my liking. I would have liked the convicts to be a little bit more scruffier. So that's another criticism of it. But The mood to this film was perfect. There was no comic sort of soundtrack. There were no stupid officers. It was a much more serious film, which was better for me because it's a very serious subject matter. And I thought that the overall mood to this was very morbid and it was very dirty. But I just felt that the characters didn't really match the appearance of these characters didn't really match the story and how gritty the actual story was. So that's as far as I go with my critique on The Last House on the Left. But I will say the things I liked about it was the mood was a lot more serious and there weren't any sort of ridiculous soundtrack or things that tried to lighten the mood, because the mood didn't need to be lightened, because this is not a lightening sort of it's not an uplifting film. It's not going to make you feel really good at the end. But the overall violence I thought was really well done. A lot of people said the rape scene wasn't graphic enough, but who needs graphic rape scenes? I don't. I thought the rape scene in this film was very, very disturbing. Just the painful look on the rape victim was just really heart-wrenching once again. But it just didn't have as much of an impact as the original did. So that's my review of both of them. Now I'm going to be giving my verdict onto which one was better. I'm sorry if I kind of went around in circles. I don't write down my reviews. It's just coming off the top of my head. So pretty hard to think of and remember everything I've said. So I do apologise if I've repeated myself here and there, but hopefully you've followed me enough and you're still with me. And it's nearly 12 minutes, so I better get a move on. So the film, when comparing the two, the film I thought that was better is the remake. For the simple fact that the light-hearted sort of soundtrack and the characters in the original nearly ruined it, and that's why this film gets the nod over the original. This had a much more disturbing atmosphere. It was a very serious atmosphere, and it really helped it in the end. And I felt that if the original had this sort of atmosphere, it would have been a lot better. But because of the atmosphere and how different they were, I give the remake the nod over the original. I know a lot of people might not agree with me, but this is my opinion, and that's my verdict. The Last House on the Left remake. Alright guys, I hope this was clear enough for you. It's been a long video, but I've done my best, and I hope you enjoyed it. So until next time, tomorrow or the next day, I'll be doing one of The Hills of Eyes. So until then, I'll see you later. Bye.